much. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. So many months ago, I found myself tucked away at a little bed and breakfast on a snowy night with a book called Present Over Perfect by Shauna Niequist. I had just come out of a few seasons of grief and sadness in my own life and was left feeling exhausted, worn out, and definitely not present. And so that night, I opened Shauna's book and I began to weep because it was like a friend who was speaking exactly what I was thinking. Because in my own pain, I had become busy, saying yes to anyone and everything that was asked of me. I wanted to be viewed as reliable, as someone who loved and cared for everyone, but by doing that, I wasn't fully present. And so for those of you who haven't read Shauna's book, I'm gonna read the inside cover that struck me that night. Shauna writes, "A few years ago, I found myself exhausted and isolated, my soul and body sick. I was tired of being tired, burned out on busy, and it seemed almost everyone I talked with was in the same boat, longing for connection, meaning, depth, but settling for busy. I am a wife, mother, daughter, sister, friend, neighbor, writer, and I know all too well that settling feeling. But over the course of the last few years, I've learned a new way to live, marked by grace, love, rest, and play, and it's changing everything. I want to walk this path with you, a path away from frantic pushing and proving and toward your essential self, the one who you were created to be before you began proving and earning for your worth." And so I know many of you are sitting here today and you too are feeling exhausted, worn out, and not fully present in your own life. And so my hope is that this conversation with Shauna inspires you to think of a new rhythm of work and play, and that maybe along the way you'll find a little bit more of who you were created to be. So would you join me one more time in welcoming Shauna? So Shauna, we're gonna dive in. We're gonna do some rapid fire questions and just get to know you. Where do you live?
I live outside Chicago right now, but this fall we're moving to New York City.
Very fun. What inspired you to move to New York?
Our boys are 7 and 12, and it's a city we love. Right now we live outside Chicago in the suburbs, like not even like the horse farm suburbs, like the really far kind. But we love city life, and my husband and I are gonna start seminary, and we're really excited to have like a total, just the four of us, city adventure.
Oh, that's so fun. And how old are your boys?
So Mac just turned 7, and Henry turns 12 on Sunday.
Very fun. Okay, savory or sweet?
Generally savory. Generally, like the saltier and spicier, the better. However, if you ask me why I am here because Liz sent me the most delicious cake I've ever eaten in my entire life. I am not kidding you. Do you know how most people invite me to speak at events? Do you know what they send me? They send me an email. Right? Liz sent me a cake that had to be this tall. I mean, it weighed like 17 pounds.
It
came in an enormous box.
The Cake Bake Shop. Do you guys fans?
I literally threw a party because of that cake. Like, I have 17 pounds of cake in my kitchen. Somebody has to help me with this. And so, generally savory, and also that cake.
Well, awesome. We're so glad you're here. I'm sure you guys are glad she's here too. So texting or talking?
Talking.
For sure. First celebrity crush?
Okay, so this is like fraught, right? Where do you go with this? But I was thinking, so this isn't first celebrity crush, and it's not even, I'm gonna tell you 2 people that I would love to have a cup of coffee with, that I would be real nervous. I'd be like a total fangirl. Lin-Manuel Miranda, who wrote Hamilton. So we're moving to New York, and I'm totally like, I'm gonna see him on the subway for sure. And I'm gonna talk to him. I'm sure he does not take the subway at this point in his life, but I think he is incredible. And then, we're Chicago people, and I would love to have a cup of coffee with Joe Madden, the manager of the Cubs. I just think he is the best. I love watching him after the game. I think he's a great leader, so those are my 2.
Very fun. Would those be your 2 picks to have over for a dinner party too?
I think they would be great dinner party guests.
That's very fun. What would you cook for them?
Well, I mean, if New York and Chicago, you've got to do hot dogs and pizza, right? That's not really, I don't really make hot dogs, but for Chicago, you'd have to do hot dogs. For New York, you'd have to do pizza, so I'd try both.
Very fun. Okay, a little more deeper. Who most inspires you?
Well, the two writers that I always have my eye on, that I am always learning from and trying to, like, if like the best thing ever happened to me and someone said, you remind me of them, it'd be like a tremendous compliment to me. Barbara Brown Taylor and Brene Brown. I think what those two women are doing in our culture right now, in totally different ways, I'm always watching them. I think they do what they do with a tremendous groundedness and commitment to their craft and warmth, and those are people I'm always watching.
I like that. So what is the most boring thing ever?
The most boring thing ever. That's a great question. Well, I hate to drive. Like my brother is like totally one of those people who will like drive from one side of the country to the other because it like clears his mind. Like I don't even want to drive to the mall. I just, if it takes like more than 20 minutes, I need like snacks and like a pit stop. I hate to drive.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm sure many of you guys could relate to. So if you've read any of Shauna's books, you know that she is definitely not boring. So we're going to dive in, Shauna, to your book here. So first, describe to us what life has been like in most of your adulthood. And you write that you finally came to a breaking point. So let's talk about that.
So there was a moment a couple years ago where essentially, you know, every once in a while you have the opportunity to sort of look outside yourself and you look at your life with a little bit of clarity. And if you had asked me during that season, like, what matters to you? What are you about? Why do you do what you do? I would have said, like, you know what I'm about? I'm about family, about my faith. I'm about connection and warmth and deep and meaningful relationships. I'm about life around the table and storytelling and being with each other in meaningful and unrushed ways. But if you asked my calendar, it would have told you a really different truth, and it would have said, this girl hustles. I was traveling. There were years when I spoke 100 times a year, where I would do 55 events in a season, where I spent most of my life in airports and on planes and in green rooms and in hotels. And I was fast and I was productive, but I was not happy and I was not connected to my own soul or spirit, to God's spirit living within me, or to the people that I really most wanted to invest in. And so there was a moment of clarity and pain when I realized the values that I say with my mouth, I'm not living out with my body and with my calendar. And it's time to shore up that discrepancy.
And you say it was a friend's advice that changed everything. So what was that?
So I emailed a mentor. So she had invited me. You know how sometimes somebody like asks like a very easy question and then you give them like the all the way blurted out answer and they're like, oh, I did not think we were doing that right now. It was one of those. She was like, hey, do you want to come take a class with me? That's like a normal thing to ask. And you know the email that stays in your inbox forever because you can't figure out how to answer it? Like you answer all the easy ones first and you just like can't do this one. So I kept not answering it. And then finally, instead of saying like what a normal person would say, which would be like yes or no, I said, like I want to and I don't want to, and I want to go because I want to be with you and I want to learn from you and I want to learn this stuff, but also like I feel like I can't feel my life and I'm not the parent I thought I was going to be and I'm not the partner I thought I was going to be, and things feel kind of scary and I'm so tired I cry in the shower and I don't know, ... You know, there's like a handful of people that you can send that kind of email to, and they, you know, and she emailed me back right then, all caps, stop right now, remake your life from the inside out, and I will help you. And she put words to exactly the journey I needed to go on. I needed to remake my life from the inside out, and that's what the last several years have been like for me.
That's great. You say that stopping is scary and busyness is a drug. So why do you use such strong language, and what kind of drugs are we filling our time with?
Well, so a drug is anything that we use to keep ourselves from pain, right? It's anything that we use to anesthetize ourselves from the real lived experience of our lives. And I don't use like drugs, but I keep myself busy enough to not have to feel the feelings of pain or regret or anxiety or that kind of back of the mind right before you're falling asleep sense that maybe I'm not living the life I really feel called to or that I believe in. So I used busyness as a way to avoid facing those feelings. And I think we live in a culture that really values busyness, right? Like it's, people write about it. It's a badge of honor. We're proud of ourselves. It's like the thing you say to people, like, how are you? Like, so busy, You don't meet someone and, like, hey, how are you? You know what? I'm living pretty well within my margin based on the difficult choices I've made to square up my values with my calendar. That's like a really boring thing to say to people. But someone challenged me during that season. When someone asks how you are, you can say anything you want, but you can't say busy and you can't say tired. Well, I wasn't any other things, right? Couldn't say happy. So people would ask me, I'd be like, but I don't know, But it pushed me to really look at the busyness and the tiredness and how I was using those sort of as a way of proving, but also as a way of not facing some of the things that needed to be shored up on the inside of my life.
And you write that sometimes these drugs start out as gifts. We're gifted speakers, talented CEOs, good at connecting with people, but it's a slow drift that can take hold and turn these gifts into soul-suffocating traps. So what does that look like? And how do you recognize that you're beginning to be suffocated?
Well, I think all of us, the things that make you great is also a lot of times the thing that makes you a little bit vulnerable to a particular challenge or habit or addiction. And, how many musicians find themselves on a stage and then also find that life on a stage is really painful and difficult sometimes? How many, the thing that got you there is sometimes the thing that makes it painful to stay there in all sorts of ways. And I think we reward the outside things, not realizing how far the inside things are falling, right? So if you just keep showing up, if you keep knocking it out on stage, if you keep meeting your sales numbers or your professional goals, we don't very often, as long as it looks good on the outside, right? We don't say, hey, is everything okay on the inside? But I think those are the fundamental questions. Performance is not that difficult. Character over the long haul is profoundly difficult. Being charming in a sales meeting, not that hard. Being a truly present parent, really difficult, actually. Like, I can impress you in a short meet and greet, but the amount of time I have to spend talking about Harry Potter in my house really challenges me, right? But that's the stuff that matters. The people closest to you, the people in your home, the people in your church, the people in your neighborhood, the people that you've chosen to walk through life with, what they think about you matters so much more than those external, observable, kind of fancy things. But that's counterintuitive and it's countercultural.
So you talk about this whole circle exercise. How do you figure out who and what is most important in your life? And can you walk us through what that looks like?
So one thing I realized is that along the way, I was, I'm trying to slow down my life. And I'm like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna start saying no to things. So I know that they've all these inspirational quotes like, no is a complete sentence. And I'm like, yeah, and I'm gonna use it. But then it's so much easier to say yes to people who want you, like a work opportunity or an invitation to this. And I so liked the feeling that went along with saying yes to people, right? Yes, I will show up. Yes, I will bring that for you. Yes, I will do that for you. It felt so good to be like everybody's go-to person. I loved that little like bump of self-esteem that I received by like, I can meet your need, right? But I realized that you only have a finite amount of yeses that you can say. Like it is not a renewable resource. When you say yes to something, you are inevitably saying no to something else. And I realized that I was saying yes to people who were way outside of the most important circles of my life at the expense of the people right in the center. So if you picture your life, you're at the center. Your relationship with God, your physical health, your emotional, spiritual health, your personal wellness is at the center. And then the people that you choose to live life with in the most intimate way, whether that's your two closest friends or your spouse or your children, that inner circle comes next. Then maybe extended family, 2 or 3 close friends. Then maybe a couple neighborhood people, a couple key colleagues. And then like just everybody else, right? I was saying yes to everybody else because I liked what it said about me. But inevitably that meant I was saying no to the people on the inside of that circle. And so one of the things I started asking, what are the things that only I can do? What are the roles that only I can play? There are a lot of people who can speak at conferences. No one can be the mom to my boys except me. There are a lot of people who can write an article or write a book. No one can be a best friend to my best friend except me. And so what are the unique roles that I've been given? And am I stewarding those roles well enough? Or am I depending on that little energy bump that I get from pleasing people that someone else could meet their need?
That's really good. So for all of us here, I'm sure many of you are thinking, what can we go home and say no to? So what are some symptoms that might be red flags that we're currently ignoring or overlooking? Where do we begin?
Well, I would say one, like a couple of kind of diagnostic questions in a, like, how am I doing in this? How often are you carving out time to spend time alone and feel your feelings and become aware of your own body and spirit? If that's something that you're too busy to do, that's a warning sign. Because I was too busy to do that for many years to my own great detriment and regret. So, do you have a regular habit of solitude where you allow yourself to think about how your life squares with your values? And then number 2, are there people in your life that can reflect back to you? And are you asking and really listening? My friend Casey came here with me today, and Casey is we've been actually friends since we were 11, and she's one of the people that reflects reality back to me in my life. I ask her, hey, when you spend time with me, does it seem like I'm grounded spiritually? Does it seem like I'm parenting from a full, exuberant, healthy spirit? Does it seem like I'm giving everything I can to my marriage and to my extended family? Or does it feel like I'm skimming and running on empty? Does it feel like I'm giving the scraps and the leftovers to the people that matter most? And if you're willing to create an environment where you can ask each other those kinds of questions and then take the feedback seriously, you learn so much about your own self that way.
That's really good. So you talked too about the importance of finding a spiritual director in your life and kind of a board. So what does that look like, and where do you even begin to find someone like that?
So a friend of mine who was actually a mentor of mine said, every one of us, if you want to have influence, if you want to be able to positively influence someone else's life, you have to have 3 things. You have to have a mentor, you have to have a counselor, and you have to have a spiritual director. They're sort of the board of directors of your life. And they're the ones that will give you what you need in order to have something to give to someone else. And so I'm really thankful to have all 3 of those. And so I have a counselor that I've been meeting with for like a super long time. And I love him and I learn so much from him. And then I meet with a woman. There's a Jesuit retreat center near our house. And there's a woman that I meet with there. And spiritual direction, for those of you who are not necessarily familiar with it, it tends to be a little more prevalent in the Catholic Church. This is not, if you're Catholic, I'm so saying this wrong. I'm saying it absolutely wrong. But one way I explain it sometimes to my friends who are unfamiliar with it, it's a little bit like prayer with training wheels. Like someone creates a space for you to pray and sits with you in that space and sort of guides you along. Like if I'm left by myself to pray, after like 3 minutes, I'm on Pinterest, right? But if Mary's sitting next to me, she's able to draw me back kind of to the heart and soul of what we're talking about. So I'm really thankful for all 3 of those roles in my life.
What are some of the biggest improvements you've seen in your life since you took this total shift in how you lived?
I would never say that I am by any means a perfect parent. I am not a record-setting parent. I'm like maybe over 50%, I don't know. But I'm better than I was. I am giving more to my children than I was in that season that brought me to this place. I have more capacity to listen. I am able to be with them and join their world better. I'm able to slow myself down when I come out of my work life and into parenting life in a way that I didn't used to be able to do very well. And so I would say, while there are a lot of things that I have given up professionally, the return in what it brings to my parenting is worth it all the way. Because again, there are so many people who can do the exact work I do, but no one can be a mom to these kids the way that I can. And so the parenting part of it is really, really important to me.
That's really good. So one of the most powerful lines, I think, in your book is you say, "Now I know that the best thing I can offer to this world is not my force or energy, but a well-tended spirit, a wise and brave soul." So what closing advice do you have for those listening today who are thinking about finding a new rhythm for their own life?
Well, I would say most of us only change our life when the pain point gets high enough, right? So if you feel great about the pace of your life, then great. Go. You're like way ahead of where I was. But if you sense that the pain level is increasing and that there's an increasing discrepancy between the values you say with your mouth and the way your body and your calendar actually live that, I would say the present over perfect journey in my life, learning to rest, learning to live deeply in a sense of God's unconditional love for me and for all people, learning that hustling doesn't actually get you anywhere, but connection and play really do. This has been among the most meaningful journeys of my life, and I can't wait for you to experience that. Full life is so much richer than I thought it was when I was living for the hustle and the performance and other people's affirmation. A deep sense of being proud of my own values and choices matters so much more than the affirmation of other people's voices. And I'm so thankful that God led me on that journey, and I won't ever, ever, ever go back to that other way of living.
That's powerful. Would you join me one more time in thanking Shauna for joining us today? Thank you.